All right, so are you ready to kind of like ditch those fairy tales and really look at what makes a healthy relationship?
Yeah, let's get real.
Okay, good, because today we're going to dive deep into exactly that
Love it.
with an Argentinian psychotherapist and sexologist named Nilda Chiaraviglio.
She's fantastic. She really kind of like throws out the Disney playbook and offers a really refreshingly honest take on love.
Yeah, I agree. And she had some stuff in there that I was really surprised by.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm excited to kind of dig in with you.
Okay.
So Nilda starts by making this really interesting distinction between enamoramiento, that initial infatuation stage,
Right.
and actual long-lasting love. So what's your take on that?
Well, what I think is fascinating is that she sees an enamoramiento as this period of intense self-discovery more than interpersonal discovery. It's almost like we're more in love with the idea of love itself rather than the actual person standing in front of us.
Yeah, yeah. And, it's kind of like when you're first dating and you're both putting your best foot forward, hiding the messy hair and sweatpants under carefully crafted facade.
Exactly, and eventually the real you emerges.
Exactly, and that's when things get interesting.
Yeah, because once that initial chemical high wears off, the real work of love begins.
Yeah.
Nilda actually calls love a verb, emphasizing that it's about those consistent actions and not just the fleeting feelings.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, what does this mean for us, like in the real world?
I think it means those honeymoon butterflies aren't meant to last forever.
Right.
And expecting them to is a recipe for disappointment. And so when we understand that that initial intensity will fade, it allows us to then shift our focus to building something that's going to last.
Right, so it's not about chasing the butterflies.
No.
Okay.
It's about building a lasting connection based on something much deeper.
Got it. Okay, now this next concept really resonated with me. Nilda talks about this idea of supply and demand in relationships.
Oh, yeah.
So basically, we each have an offer, what we bring to the relationship, and the demand, what we need to feel loved. And I like to think of it like ordering from a menu. If one person is craving a juicy burger and the other only serves salads, well,
Yeah.
someone's going to walk away hungry.
That's a great analogy, and I think it highlights why understanding your own love language and that of your partner is so important, because incompatibility isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
But ignoring those differences can lead to resentment
Exactly.
down the line. So, think about it. Have you ever felt like your needs just weren't being met in a relationship?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And realizing that I wasn't communicating those needs effectively was a huge learning curve for me.
That's something we all have to learn, and that's a big part of why Nilda throws out this idea of Disney love being violent.
Violent. Okay, hold on. That sounds a bit intense. What does she mean by that?
Well, think about those classic fairy tales.
Okay.
They often paint this picture of love where one person can change the other to fit some perfect mold. But in reality, that expectation puts immense pressure on both people. And so it creates feelings of inadequacy and resentment.
Right, yeah.
It's like that famous Nilda quote.
Te amo. Nada más que tienes que cambiar esto, esto, esto.
I love you, but you need to change this, this, and this.
Exactly.
Wow. I never thought about it that way before. But I can definitely see how holding on to that Disney love ideal can set you up for some serious heartache.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt that pressure to change for a partner?
I think most of us have, to some degree.
Yeah.
Maybe not as dramatic as in the movies, but those subtle pressures to be someone we're not.
Right.
I think the key is recognizing those patterns and choosing to build relationships based on acceptance.
Yes.
And celebrating each other's individuality.
Okay. I'm so ready to ditch those fairy tales.
Me too.
Get real. So what else does Nilda have to say about building a healthy connection?
Well, she links the feeling of inadequacy to becoming needy in relationships.
Okay.
It's almost like clinging to crumbs when there's a whole feast available.
I see that.
Right.
Yeah, and when you're constantly seeking validation from your partner, right.
You end up settling for those limosnas, those little bits of charity.
Right.
Instead of demanding the full loving connection that you deserve.
That's exactly what Nilda says. She's like, true fulfillment has to come from within.
Yes.
And so when you rely on your partner to complete you, or you're constantly seeking their approval,
yeah,
you actually diminish your own worth.
That's such a good point. And it's like you see those relationships where one person is constantly clinging to the other.
Yeah.
Terrified of being alone.
Right.
But that dynamic rarely leads to lasting happiness.
It doesn't. And that's why Nilda outlines these 4 stages of relationship maturity.
Okay.
So it starts with dependence, moves to independence.
And then ideally culminates in interdependence.
Yes.
Which is like the real goal.
That's the goal, right? And it's kind of like learning to ride a bike.
Mm-hmm.
At first, you need those training wheels. You're completely dependent.
Right.
Then you get brave enough and you take them off. You're independent. But eventually, you can ride side by side, enjoying the journey together while still being capable on your own.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
It captures the essence of what she describes. You know, she says, vamos a estar entregándonos plenamente la experiencia de compartir nuestra vida sin perder la autonomía.
So we are fully embracing the experience of sharing our lives without losing our autonomy.
Yeah.
I like that. So where do you see yourself on this spectrum of relationship maturity?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I know it's something to think about.
It is, and it's definitely a journey, not a destination.
Absolutely.
And I think recognizing where you are is the first step towards growth.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, speaking of growth, Nilda gets pretty real about the importance of freedom within a relationship. And she emphasizes that both financial and emotional independence are crucial.
That's huge because financial freedom means you're choosing to be with your partner.
Right.
Not because you're dependent on them.
And honestly, that makes the decision to stay so much more powerful.
Yes, it does.
Because it's like, I'm here because I want to be, not because I have to be.
Exactly. And emotional independence means that your happiness doesn't hinge solely on your partner's moods or actions.
Right.
It's about cultivating a sense of self-worth and fulfillment outside of the relationship.
Which allows you to show up as a more whole and balanced person.
Exactly.
Within the relationship.
It really is a win-win.
It is. And this brings us to another crucial aspect of healthy relationships.
Yes.
Communication. Nilda has this brilliant law of communication.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I'm all ears because miscommunication can be a real relationship killer.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So what's the secret sauce?
Well, she highlights that the true meaning of communication lies in the response. Not just in what you intended to say. So think about it. Have you ever gotten into an argument because you just assumed your partner understood what you meant, even though you never actually said it out loud?
All the time.
Right.
Like when you sigh loudly and expect your partner to magically know you want a back rub.
Yes.
It's a recipe for disaster.
It happens to the best of us, but she stresses the importance of listening with curiosity, not judgment to truly understand your partner's perspective. It's about stepping back from your own assumptions and genuinely trying to see things from their point of view.
Yeah, it's so easy to fall into the trap of just waiting for your turn to talk.
It is.
Instead of really listening.
Absolutely. But when you approach communication with curiosity, it opens up a space for a much more productive and fulfilling conversation.
For sure. Okay, now for a real aha moment, Nilda talks about how our reactions in relationships often stem from our own past wounds, not what our partner actually did.
Right?
It's so true.
It's about recognizing those triggers that cause us to overreact or misinterpret situations.
It's like if you totally freak out when your partner is late because of a childhood experience where someone constantly let you down.
Right.
It's not really about their lateness. It's about that deeper wound resurfacing.
Exactly. And she poses this powerful question, ¿Qué te duele? Tu llaga o del dedo del otro? What hurts you? Your own wound or the finger of the other person?
Whoa. That really makes you think.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that so much of what we bring to our relationships is shaped by our past experiences.
Totally.
So I'm curious, what are some of those buttons that get pushed for you?
Oh, that's a good question.
I know. What are those things that trigger you in your relationships?
I think for me it's, I think it's important for everyone to ask themselves that question.
Absolutely.
Because becoming aware of those triggers is the first step to healing those old hurts and responding in a healthier way.
Okay, let's take a deep breath and move on to something a little lighter, although it's still incredibly important.
Okay.
Nilda's take on agreements and boundaries.
I love this. She believes that not every disagreement needs to feel like a relationship-ending crisis.
Which is good, because I know some couples who threaten to break up over who does the dishes.
It happens. It happens. But she emphasizes the importance of accepting your partner's choices.
Right.
Even if you don't agree with them.
That doesn't mean being a doormat, though.
No, it's about finding that balance between honoring your own needs and respecting your partner's individuality.
Which brings us back to communication and setting clear boundaries.
Yes.
So what are those non-negotiables for you in a relationship?
Oh, let me think about that.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's a big question. What are those boundaries that are absolutely essential for you?
Yeah,
Something to think about.
it is. They're crucial questions to consider.
Yeah,
Healthy relationships require mutual respect and a deep understanding of each other's limits.
for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, we're in the home stretch of part 1 of this deep dive.
Right.
Nilda wraps things up with some wisdom about the constantly changing nature of, well, pretty much everything.
Yes.
And she reminds us that we're not static beings, we're always evolving.
That's true for our relationships as well.
Yeah, and it's so easy to get caught up in the idea that we or our partners need to stay the same.
Right.
But that's just not realistic.
It's not.
Think about how your perspective on relationships has changed over time.
Oh, absolutely.
Mine has definitely evolved.
Mine too.
Yeah, we're all constantly growing and changing.
Yeah.
And our relationships need to adapt along with us.
I do.
Nilda sums it up perfectly. Los seres humanos no somos ni naturaleza ni esencia. Somos procesos desde que nacemos hasta que nos morimos.
We are not fixed. We are processes constantly in motion.
And embracing that constant evolution is key to maintaining a healthy, fulfilling connection.
It is.
And she even refuses to change anything about her past,
Yay.
highlighting the power of living fully in the present.
I love that.
Yeah, me too. Okay, there's a lot to unpack,
Yes.
but it was so insightful. So what were some of the biggest takeaways for you from this first part of our deep dive?
I think for me, Nilda's emphasis on self-awareness and personal growth as the foundation for healthy relationships really stood out to me. You know, we can't truly love another until we learn to love and accept ourselves.
Absolutely, and recognizing that love is an active choice.
Yes.
It's a verb, not just a passive feeling.
I love that.
And speaking of action, we'll be back for part 2, where we delve even deeper into Nilda's advice for navigating those everyday relationship challenges, so stay tuned.
Sounds good. Yeah, it really is all about that continuous growth and evolution, you know, both as individuals and as a couple.
Totally, and let's face it, that evolution isn't always, sunshine and roses.
Right.
There are those everyday bumps in the road that every couple faces, like leaving the toilet seat up.
Oh, yeah.
Forgetting to take out the trash. Those little things can drive you crazy.
Absolutely. Those classic relationship dilemmas.
Right.
But Nilda has a really refreshing perspective on how to deal with them.
Okay.
She suggests taking responsibility for our own feelings instead of immediately blaming our partner.
So instead of fuming over that wet towel on the bathroom floor for the 100th time, maybe we should be asking ourselves, why does this bother Emmy so much?
Exactly. It's about understanding the root of our reactions rather than trying to control our partner's behavior.
I think this is where things get tricky, though.
Okay.
Because so many of us have been conditioned to believe that our partner should just know what we want or need.
It's a common trap, and one that Nilda cautions against, because trying to change your partner often leads to resentment and frustration on both sides.
It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Exactly.
It just doesn't work.
It just doesn't work. And so it's so much healthier to focus on acceptance and open communication.
Right.
Speaking of communication, I love how Nilda emphasizes listening with curiosity.
Oh, yeah.
It's so easy to just listen for your turn to talk or formulate a rebuttal, but that completely misses the point of connection.
Oh, I am so guilty of that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I catch myself already planning my response before my partner has even finished talking.
It's a natural tendency, but it's a skill that we can all practice.
Right.
It's about approaching conversations with a genuine desire to understand your partner's perspective, even if you don't agree with it.
It's that shift from judgment to curiosity.
Yes.
Which can be really tough.
It can be really tough in the heat of the moment.
Yes.
It takes practice, but remember, the goal is understanding, not necessarily agreement.
Okay.
And she also reminds us that our partner's actions aren't always a direct reflection of us. We often take things personally when they're not intended that way.
Oh my gosh, I do that all the time.
Yeah.
Like if my partner forgets something I asked them to do, my immediate thought is, they don't care about me.
But Nilda reminds us to quítale el me a tu narrativa y la vida con eso ya empieza a cambiar. Remove the me from your narrative and life begins to change.
Wow, that's powerful.
It is.
It's about recognizing that our partner's actions are often driven by their own experiences and perspectives, not some hidden agenda to hurt us.
Right. And so when you can detach from that personal interpretation, it creates a space for more empathy and compassion.
This whole conversation is blowing my mind. I'm realizing how often I project my own insecurities and past baggage onto my relationships.
It's a common human tendency.
Yeah.
But becoming aware of it is the first step towards breaking those patterns.
Okay, let's talk about something that can be a real deal breaker for many couples.
Okay.
Money.
Money, yes.
Nilda stresses the importance of both partners having financial independence.
It's not just about splitting the bills evenly.
Right.
It's about each person having a sense of autonomy and control over their finances.
Which, as we discussed earlier, allows you to choose to be with your partner.
Yes.
Because you want to be, not because you're financially trapped.
Exactly. It creates a foundation of equality, and it empowers both partners to make decisions that are in their best interest.
Right.
Both individually and as a couple.
And of course, emotional independence is just as crucial.
Yes.
This means not relying on your partner to be your sole source of happiness or validation.
Right. It's about developing a sense of self-worth and fulfillment that comes from within, not solely from your relationship.
It's about having your own passions, interests, and support systems.
Yes.
So you're not completely reliant on your partner to meet all of your emotional needs.
And this allows for a much healthier and more balanced dynamic where both partners can grow and thrive as individuals while contributing to the relationship's growth.
I love how Nilda's approach is so holistic.
Me too.
You know, she's not just talking about communication or boundaries in isolation. She emphasizes the interconnectedness of personal growth, self-awareness, and authenticity in building a truly fulfilling relationship.
It's like she's saying that to have a healthy relationship, you first have to be a healthy individual.
Totally. And speaking of being healthy, Nilda also touches on the importance of physical intimacy.
Yes.
But she stresses that it should be a natural expression of connection, not a means to an end or a way to fix problems.
That's a crucial distinction. She highlights that true intimacy requires vulnerability and trust. It can't be forced or manipulated.
So it's not about fulfilling some predetermined expectation, but rather about meeting each other's needs.
Exactly.
With respect and understanding.
And she reminds us that intimacy isn't limited to the physical.
Right.
It can manifest in so many ways, through deep conversations, shared experiences, simple acts of kindness, or just enjoying each other's company.
And I think this is so important because we often get caught up in societal expectations of what intimacy should look like.
Yes.
And we forget to tune in to what feels good and fulfilling for us and our partner.
Right. And so it's about creating space for open communication and exploration. Where both partners feel safe to express their desires and needs.
This brings up the question, how do we cultivate this kind of intimacy?
That's the big question.
Where do we even begin?
Nilda suggests starting with self-awareness.
Okay.
What are your own needs and boundaries? How do you communicate those effectively? And then it's about fostering a culture of honesty and openness within the relationship where both partners feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and feelings without fear of judgment.
That requires vulnerability.
It does.
Which can be scary.
It can.
But it's also incredibly rewarding.
It is, because when you can truly be yourself with your partner, that's when real intimacy flourishes.
Okay, so we've covered so much ground already in this deep dive, from those initial sparks of enamoramento to the complexities of communication and intimacy.
We have.
Really exploring Nilda's insights on creating a fulfilling and lasting connection.
Yes, and I think one of the most powerful takeaways so far is Nilda's emphasis on personal responsibility.
It all comes back to that, doesn't it? It's not about waiting for our partner to change or trying to fit them into some ideal mold. It's about owning our own growth and showing up as the best version of ourselves.
And remembering that growth is a journey, not a destination.
Absolutely.
We're all constantly evolving, and our relationships need to adapt and evolve alongside us.
Which can be challenging at times.
It can be.
But it also makes the journey so much more exciting because it means there's always room for deeper connection.
Yes.
Greater understanding and more love.
More love, exactly. And as Nilda reminds us, los seres humanos no somos ni naturaleza ni esencia. Somos procesos desde que nacemos hasta que nos morimos. We are not static beings. We are processes, constantly in motion.
So how do we embrace this ever-changing flow within our relationships? How do we navigate those inevitable ups and downs while staying true to ourselves and our partner?
That's a great question. I don't think Nilda gives us a simple formula, but she does equip us with some incredibly valuable tools.
Like her emphasis on clear communication, setting healthy boundaries, and cultivating both financial and emotional independence.
And maybe most importantly, she encourages us to approach our relationships with curiosity, compassion, and a willingness to learn and grow alongside our partner.
I think this deep dive has been a powerful reminder that healthy relationships are built on a foundation of self-love, respect, and consistent effort.
They're not a fairy tale.
Right. But they can be a source of immense joy and fulfillment when we approach them with intention and awareness.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what's resonating most with you? What insights from Nilda's work are you carrying with you?
You know, take some time to reflect on that.
Yeah.
Be sure to join us for the final part of our exploration where we delve into Nilda's wisdom on dealing with conflict,
Okay.
setting boundaries, and embracing the ever-changing nature of love.
Can't wait to continue this journey with you. All right, welcome back. We're wrapping up our deep dive into healthy relationships with Nilda Chiaraviglio.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has, and I'm excited to explore this next part. You know, even when we're doing all the right things, disagreements are bound to happen.
Right.
So how does Nilda suggest we navigate those choppy waters?
Well, it's interesting because Nilda doesn't see conflict as a bad thing.
Okay.
In itself, she actually views it as an opportunity for growth and deeper understanding.
But let's be real, in the heat of the moment, conflict rarely feels like a growth opportunity. It doesn't.
So how do we shift that perspective?
That's the key, isn't it?
Yeah.
She encourages us to kind of move away from the idea of like winning an argument and instead focus on finding a solution that works for both partners.
So it's about collaboration.
Exactly, not
disagreement.
competition. And that requires being open to hearing your partner's point of view, even when it's different from yours.
Easier said than done.
Much easier said than done, especially when emotions are running high.
Oh, yeah. It's so tempting to just get defensive or shut down completely.
It is, and that's why Nilda stresses the importance of being mindful of how we communicate during those heated moments.
Okay.
She suggests avoiding personal attacks and instead focusing on expressing your own feelings and needs clearly and respectfully.
So instead of saying, "You're always so inconsiderate,"
Right.
you might say, "I felt hurt and disregarded when you forgot to call me back."
It's a subtle shift, but it can make a world of difference.
Yeah, it takes the sting out of the conversation
It does.
and allows for a more productive exchange.
Right. It's about de-escalating the situation and creating space for genuine understanding.
And speaking of creating space, Nilda also emphasizes the importance of setting clear boundaries in relationships.
Yes. This is something we touched on earlier, but it's worth revisiting.
It is.
It's about knowing what you're willing to tolerate and what you're not, and communicating those limits to your partner.
And it's not about controlling your partner's behavior.
No.
It's about protecting your own well-being.
Exactly. And it's okay if your boundaries differ from your partner's.
Right.
It's about finding a compromise that respects both of your needs, which again all comes back to open and honest communication.
It's about being assertive, but not aggressive in expressing your needs and being willing to listen to your partner's boundaries as well.
Absolutely. And I think this whole idea of boundaries becomes especially important when dealing with past hurts or traumas that we might bring into our relationships.
Because often our boundaries are a reflection of those past experiences.
Exactly. For example, if you were betrayed in a previous relationship, you might have a stronger need for transparency and reassurance in your current one.
It's about recognizing those patterns and communicating them to your partner
Yeah.
so they can understand where you're coming from.
And hopefully they can support you in healing those old wounds, but ultimately Nilda emphasizes that the responsibility for healing lies with you.
Which brings us back to her core message. Personal growth is the foundation for a healthy relationship.
Yes, we can't expect our partner to fix us or fulfill all of our needs.
Right. It's about taking ownership of your own happiness and well-being
Yeah.
and bringing your whole authentic self to the relationship.
This deep dive has been such a powerful reminder that love isn't just a passive emotion. It's an active choice.
It's a commitment to growth, understanding, and continuous effort.
Yeah.
It's about embracing the journey, both the smooth sailing and the rough waters.
And it's a journey that's meant to be shared, but also one that requires us to be whole and complete within ourselves.
Nilda's insights have given us so much to reflect on, haven't they?
They have.
From challenging those fairy tale notions of love to embracing the ever-changing flow of life and relationships.
I don't know about you, but I'm walking away from this conversation with a renewed sense of hope and excitement for the possibilities.
Me too. It's inspiring to see how self-awareness and conscious effort can really transform our connections with others.
It all starts with understanding ourselves, our needs, our boundaries, and our own unique journey.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of healthy relationships with Nilda Chiaraviglio, what's the one thing you hope our listeners will take away from this conversation?
You know, I think if there's one key takeaway, it's that healthy relationships are an ongoing process of growth and discovery. They require effort, intention, and a willingness to show up authentically, But the rewards, the joy, the deep connection that can come from that effort are absolutely worth it.
Beautifully said. So to our listeners, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep investing in those relationships that matter most. And remember, the journey to love is a lifelong adventure. Thanks for diving deep with us. Until next time.